I don't know where Carlos went. I know Josh went to the store. We got Sam, we got Travis. What up, Travis?
What's going on, Stan?
Have we met before?
We have not.
Nice. Have you been in our underwriting session?
I have not.
Okay, so this is your first one.
First
time.
I
nice,
am
welcome.
Previous TTP. Well, I'm still in TTP right
now. How's that going?
It's going. I don't know. People are not answering the phone at all today for me. So I recently switched from Badge to Mojo a few months ago. It's better now, but people are still not answering the phone.
Like. Yeah. So are you licensed as well?
No.
Okay. So obviously, I think you know the cold calling game is getting a lot more hit with, like, no one's answering just because everyone's kind of beat up on it. Everyone knows that they're getting telemarketed to. So might have to consider taking a different route or just adding it as a different option. Because that's what I noticed out here in Vegas. It was the same thing. Nobody wants to answer their phones. People are tired, right? So we kind of went on a different route and started going back traditional with door knocking. And door knocking actually has paid off more than the cold calling aspect, because it's easier to hang up the phone on someone than it is to close the door on someone else, right? So I don't know if you're open to door knocking, but I think that might be a better option if that's something that you might be interested in, just as a tip from what I do. I don't know. I know it says Houston, Texas. I don't know how it is out there, because I know there's some states that don't allow you to door knock.
Yeah. I mean, so I've done some door knocking on like pre-foreclosures and stuff, and it's just a bunch of really pissed off people that, you know, I guess they're in denial type thing.
Yeah.
But that's about the only experience that I have with that. Left some, you know, door hangers and stuff, but didn't get any feedback from that either. So.
Yeah. Are you targeting mostly pre-foreclosures?
That's what I've been knocking, as far as like, you know, going there, leaving them notes and knocking on their door and stuff. But if there's a better list, maybe that I should focus on as far as, you know, knocking and stuff. I just know when I'm doing the driving for dollars and stuff, the majority of what I see is like, it's vacant, so nobody's going to answer the door, and if they do, it's probably not their house type thing. So
right. I mean, as far as lists, pre-foreclosure is always going to be one of your top lists to pull, just because obviously if you're looking for more of the distressed sellers, that's the best type of leads to get, right? If obviously they always say absentee owners are always good too, but those are always you know, you'll get a lot of hit or miss on that too. Hold on 1 second.
What's up, Travis?
What's going on, dude?
Not too much. I'm glad you're here, man. We need more TTP guys in here.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it going, dude. I don't know, like, there's no luck at all on the phone today, so trying to make sure it's not operator error.
That's my problem, man. Like recently, like I feel like cold calling just shut off. And the carriers just locked it down. If you got a phone number that isn't registered to a person or a business, like it's spam risk automatically. I'll buy 20 phone numbers and all of them except one isn't spam risk already, and it's going to spam within 5 minutes of me calling.
So is there any way around that you guys know of? Because I did establish an LLC for this, but I just don't know if like that's all legit, because I know there's a way to register it and all that, but if it's worth it, then obviously I would do it, but I haven't heard anything, you know, that's a general consensus that it works.
Maybe Stan has more experience on that. I only reached out to Vumber and they said I have to email them the numbers that I bought that I want registered, and they have to register it themselves. I did that, and it did make a difference for me. I also got all transparency as well and registered myself. It didn't make a difference in my experience.
Yeah, so you've tried multiple different rounds. There's another one that I've heard of called caller representation ID. I don't know how good of a service they are, but that's what was recommended. I don't cold call anymore, to be honest. So, I
think I'm
haven't
done
done
with
any
it.
of that.
Yeah, you
I
don't
mean,
at all in your business, or you personally don't?
I personally don't. I'm doing more of like the agent outreach or, just wholesaler outreach, just networking.
Yep.
I spend $0 on marketing now, and I think that's been honestly the payoff has been better. Ever since I started running this with Carlos and Josh, we normally have more people, but we didn't even advertise it today. I got a bit slammed, but we've been doing this now for I think 4 weeks. So people are just kind of starting to see that, there's value that's being given on this, and they, I just kind of get leads from that, and that's how I get my deal flow. But cold calling, obviously it's another strategy. Keep it if you can spend the money doing it. If you don't want to do it, what I was doing was I hired an agency to do it for me, because I just don't like the whole cold calling, sitting there for hours. But if you like it, that's what you like to do, do it, but for me, the free route and just networking has been the better route for myself.
That's the direction I want to work towards for sure. I mean, I've been in sales pretty much the majority of my life, so I don't care about doing the calls or getting told fuck you or any of that kind of stuff. I'm just trying to make sure that what I'm doing is productive, and when I sit on the phone and I'm not speaking to human beings, when the whole idea is to talk to people, it's just a little defeating. So I'm just trying to redirect on the different approaches. I recently got my wife on board as well, so she's going to be doing SMS. So that's the main thing that we're going to start incorporating now. But I know they're cracking down on that a lot, really hard too. So
yeah, I've seen that. There are some people. Obviously, you gotta make sure with your county and your state if that's even allowed, because I do see some students in our sub 2 that's been getting flagged, or like the ones that really know the laws. They've been sending them threats on having them get sued, right, just for unsolicited texting. I don't know how valid that would be, but obviously more people are prone to text versus answer to calls. But it also depends on the type of message you're trying to send out. I get random ass marketing texts all the time that just says hi, but you already can tell that sometimes that might just be a spam or bot or a scammer. So I ignore it myself. I know batch leads, that's what they used to do, or they do that, but they custom make it so that it sounds like a human.
I know the contact rate's a lot better. That's the main reason I was going to at least give it a shot.
Right.
But I'm willing to do whatever works, whatever is working for sure. I know that, as far as Brent and what they're going through, it's all on the buyer side. They're still locking them up, but the buyers are just like terrified. So that's the main thing that they're struggling with. So I assume the majority of the market. Would you say that, Stan, would you say that your market there is similar to Arizona? I know it's kind of exploding in Vegas.
No, I don't think our market's the same as Arizona. Arizona's a hot market. We're both hot markets, but I think Arizona just grew a lot more than us. We're still growing. But for us, we kind of noticed like a big, it was almost overnight with the shift on the market cycle. When it came to like the buyers submitting offers, it's not as aggressive anymore. There's a lot of supply. I think there's over 300% of supply that jumped on the market just in the last 3 weeks. So we can tell that there is a significant drop on offers.
Got you.
Yeah, no more over asking, no more multiple offers, and now people are starting to give more concessions. Sellers are having to give more concessions to get like some kind of attention. under offers. So yeah, it's different.
I mean, that's healthy. I mean, it needed somewhat of
yeah.
a plateau, but you know, just as us trying to figure out where we're at, you know, that's the fun part, right?
Yep, exactly.
But what do y'all typically do on Fridays? I know y'all have like a schedule and stuff.
Yeah, so this is the multifamily underwriting class that I do. I just basically show everybody how to underwrite multifamily deals. There's a new person that just hopped in, Dime. Sam's been with us for the last, what, 4 sessions? Oh, shit. What up, brother? You changed your name again.
I get tired of changing it back and forth. I
Yeah.
kind of just left it. Everybody knows that it's your boy Shane, you know.
Welcome back, brother. All right, so let's see. Have you guys started reaching out to multifamily sellers?
I don't know the best route, and besides door knocking.
Have-
I pull lists from PropStream, and more than half of them don't have phone numbers. On the skip.
Under LLCs?
Yeah, and a lot of times tenants pick up. I pulled a list of 1,000 in Houston because I'm pretty close to Houston, and I got like a 4 or 5% contact rate, and 90% of those were all tenants answering the phone.
Gotcha. Okay. Have you ever hopped in on the other multifamily group that's been in sub 2, like KJ Mudd and Joseph Mudd, Oscar Martinez, I think, or
I don't think
So-
I have.
they do their acquisitions a little bit different on how they get leads. They go with the agent outreach, which is actually really easy and simple. They just go on Crexy or LoopNet, and they reach out to the brokers and agents and just basically introduce themselves. Their strategies, you know, is different. You're not cold calling actual like sellers, right?
Mhm.
They already have a deal or potential deal that they might be able to dispo to you, or not, or tell you like, hey, Sam, we got a deal. This fits right in your buy box. Let me know if you're interested. So it kind of eases the stress of trying to reach out to random sellers. But not to say that if you're trying to go that route where you're wanting to be direct to seller, I don't do that, so I can't really give you my advice. There's a guy, are you in sub 2, Sam?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Maybe Carlos can connect you with Nick Midden. So they acquire a lot of multifamily. I don't know how they do it. Maybe we can get some insight from him or invite him on a Zoom to jump in with us and kind of see how, you know, we can pick his brain and see how they acquire multifamily sellers. I
Yeah.
usually just get mine from LoopNet or Crexy, and I just basically underwrite deals, right? So that's how I kind of attract my investors to find deals. There's so many different avenues when it comes to multifamily. It's just more of how you want to approach it, like what your end goal is. For me, I'm licensed, so I represent the investors, and then obviously I'm not direct to seller, so I don't have to negotiate with them. I just negotiate with the broker and just make sure that it works. So which is what you're seeing on the screen today. This is actually a multifamily property that I found on Crexy last week. We're just gonna dive into it, so we don't waste any more time. So I'm gonna put it up on the screen. It's right here.
And is that a membership cost subscription?
No, actually, this is free.
Okay.
It's right here. Move this around. All right. So the site is called Crexy, right? Crexy.com. And all I literally do is if you go right here where it says for sale, I just type multifamily, or I pick multifamily. I deselect these because I'm looking for apartment buildings, right? You can go RV parks, you can go single family, you can go student housings, but if you want to go multifamily, then it's the apartment building. Now, with Crexy, obviously you can get different asset classes, right? You retail, you get office, industrial, hospitality, mixed use, land, self-storage, like they have it all. So this is one website. The other website is called LoopNet. So the same exact thing, but it's just a different website. Not all agents list on both websites. So you might want to have to check to see what's available, but that's one of the best ways. If you want to go the best route, but it's also the route that costs the most, it's CoStar. So CoStar, I believe their subscription is like $400 a month. I don't subscribe to them yet, but they pull the best data when it comes to getting access to every single type of property on the market, because it gives you like a very, very intense analytics for each property. And you can basically scrape true owners from here. You can get a list of properties based on what you're looking for. So these are the three main ones. And I believe CoStar owns Crexy now. There's another one, but I can't remember what it's called. I want to say it's like Realist or Redfi or something like that, but I can't remember. But going back to Crexy, this is how I found the Las Vegas deal. I literally just typed in Las Vegas, right? And then from here, it shows that there's 26 results just in this area. So you can just scroll on here and it tells you, you know, what you're looking for, all the price points, how many units, okay? And they pop up every so often. You can set alerts to have it send an email to you, you know, whatever it fits in your criteria. So this is the one that we're going to be underwriting today, which is this is the one I found last week. Okay. So when you start seeing this, you're going to see all the overview right here, the address, when it was added, the type of details in the property. All right. So multifamily, this is a value add. It's a class C. It's telling you what its future projection on a cap rate at 11.55%. How many units? There's 3 buildings, so 3 separate structures. How many? What the size of the lot is, the subtype of the property, and then this is also a development area or a development type of investment, square footage, pro forma breakdown, which is your net operating income of what this property is performing at with future rents, year build, and then zoning, then price per unit. Here's the broker's information. And then if what ends up happening is in multifamily, there's 4 things to keep in mind whenever you want to get information, which is the offering memorandum, which is right here. It's called the OM. So they usually attach it. It's basically an overview of what the property is. This is a very, very short one. It's only 2 pages. Most other ones that are a lot more, you know, there's more units, then they kind of give you a breakdown of, it's more sophisticated, let's just say. This one's not as sophisticated. It's just very quick. Here's the rundown. Here's the financials. Here's the rent rolls. But in the OM, it usually gives you that, right? Gives you an overview of the property, gives you a bit of details. They don't normally attach rent rolls. It's usually a separate file, but you want to get the OM, offering memorandum. You want to get the profit and loss statements, which they haven't provided on this. You want the rent roll, which is right here. It tells you every single unit that's on property, who's occupying it, and they typically give you more information. This is what they're paying in rents versus what you could rent it out for in the future. And then so out of those 3, there's also what's called a T12. T12 stands for trailing 12 months. So those are 4 main things whenever you want to ask a broker or a seller if the seller has any of those provided. Usually their property management company provides it and breaks it down for you, but sometimes if it's a mom and pop's like old school seller, sometimes they're not organized and they don't have all that. So that's what's going to be a tough part, because then you don't know what to really go off of when you underwrite a property. Do you guys have any
And-
questions so far?
Yeah, so you have to reach out to the broker to find their property manager, or is that usually in the description, or do you have to talk to the seller to know who their
No,
property manager is?
So if it's just direct to seller, then you can ask them, hey, can you provide me some financial statements, your profit and loss, your T12? And then most of the time, if they are organized, they'll say, hey, I have it attached in here, or I can have my property management company send it out to you. But before that, what I need you to provide me is either a letter of intent, which is an LOI, or some proof of funds, or they might want both, right? And the reason being is because they want you to be like, they want to know if you're a credible buyer, so you're not just wasting their time. Okay,
Gotcha.
so an LOI is very, very quick. It can be really short. It's just more straight to the point. I'll show you what an LOI that I sent out. And I just got to remove some names, so that way it's not. I just got to keep it confidential. There we go. I'll send it like this. So this is an LOI. This is very short, right? Very quick, super easy. Some of them they get very complicated, but this one we just want to keep it really quick because this is not a binding contract. This is just a preliminary expression. Basically, it's just saying like, hey, we have a letter to show you that this is our intentions. This is what we want to submit. And once an LOI is drafted, your buyer, you as a buyer or whatever, if you're the investor, you're going to submit this to your agent, or your agent drafts this out for you. Once it's executed with signatures, you're sending this back over to the other party. Okay. Once that party receives it, what they're going to do is called red line. They're going to go in, they're going to look at your letter of intent. They're going to see what your intentions are with the property, how you're trying to purchase it. If you're doing cash, if you're doing financing, what type of contingencies that they have in the contract. So they're going to evaluate this letter of intent and then basically compare it to the other offers that they have on the table. And then if they like what you have, but they don't like certain terms that you have provided in the LOI, then that's what they're going to do. They're going to redline it, right? So like, for example, let's say a suggestion right here, you know, let's say 900,000, right? You can do that. And then, you know, it just shows right here, they're going to redline it. Okay, cool. I don't want to use this person. So I'm going to do a strike through. I forgot how to do a strike through, but let's use, I want to use Stan from WFG, you know, stuff like that. So this is what we're talking about redlining. They're just basically changing your LOI to what they want as a counter. It's just basically their counter offer. So once that happens, then you're basically going back and forth negotiating and then basically coming to terms. So once that's agreed upon for both parties, then the next part is called a PSA, which is a purchase and sale agreement. That purchase and sale agreement is what's going to be basically drafted over from the LOI, and then that's going to be your executed contract to move forward and then put into escrow. So once that's validated with your contract for the PSA, you send it in with your deposit and you move forward like a regular transaction. Cool. Get everybody following?
Sir, good stuff.
Awesome. Cool. So right here, what you guys see is basically how I underwrite properties. I'm just gonna make a copy of this so I don't mess this one up. Let me just duplicate this real quick. We'll start from scratch. Okay. So as you guys can see on this calculator, is this small? Is this too small? Or should I blow it up a little bit more?
You're good.
All right, so this is something new that I added. I got this from this portion right here from another calculator. This actually helps underwrite a deal a lot quicker than how I was doing it originally. But you can see that this is a different section, and then here are like my property details that I inputted on this specific property for the Las Vegas units. Okay, and then down here, you can see that I already put in all the rent rolls that they currently are charging as is. And then this is what the future projection of rents are after you repair it and get everything up to par, is what they are suggesting, right? So if we look right here, this calculator is pretty simple right here in this section. Anything I input in this will just basically plug in, and it'll spit out a formula based on those numbers. So every market has a different cap rate. Okay. When in multifamily, it can range anywhere between, as low as 3%, sometimes up to, let's say 15%. The higher the percent in cap rate, the higher the risk. The lower the cap rate, the lower the risk, right? So what I mean by that is when you're dealing with the property classes of class A, class B, class C, class D, it's just basically saying what type of, there's a few different factors on each class, but class A is like your high-end hotels, higher end finishes, they're more luxury, they have a lot of amenities, they have a pool, they have gyms, they'll have a door guy, stuff like that. That's a class A. Newer builds and better surrounding areas. And then it goes lower, basically a class B, still good materials in the property, still in good condition, a little bit older, less amenities, still in great neighborhoods, right? And then class C is like what I'm analyzing, which is right here. And based on the neighborhoods, you can tell, like, just from this aerial shot that, it's not the best looking area, right? It's dated. This is built in 1958. You can see that the neighboring units, they're run down, right? You can tell just from all this garbage right here, all this trash, that this is not a class A or class B type of neighborhood. But I mean, the units are, they're livable. They're not super basic, they're upgraded, better materials, right? It's not like the typical grungy, there's terrible flooring, terrible kitchen, just, it looks terrible. Like this is like all upgraded. So, it's cheaper materials, but it's livable for this area. So that's typically what a class C is. And then obviously you'll have your class D, which is basically a class that you don't ever want to pick up. It's like your war zone, right? You have drug dealers and you have like crime, a high crime in the area. So those you want to stay away from, basically. So if we're going back to this, going back to the cap rate, like I said, cap rate, the higher the cap rate, the higher the risk, the lower the cap rate. If you start seeing like the 3 to 6%, that means you've basically stabilized the property, right? So you can take a class C do all your renovations, and then you can basically upgrade that and turn it into a B- or a B or a B+. But you can never take a C and take it and build it into a class A. That'll never happen. Right? Oh, there he is. Who's that one?
This is Maui.
Maui. Maui Wowie.
Giles.
That's awesome.
Sorry for being late. I was on a couple calls.
Awesome, good man. So going back to that, if for a class C, for this neighborhood, we're gonna underwrite it at an 8 because it's never gonna be. It's hard to make it go down to a 5. Typically, a class C, they'll range between like an 8 and 11%, right? Sometimes even 12. So we're gonna start off at 8%, and the best way to do that, there is a website that you can utilize. It's called, let's see, I think it's called Apartment Store, apartmentloanstore.com. So if you type in on Google, like apartment loan store, let's see, class C rates. There we go. So it'll tell you what the cap rates are right here on like multifamily units. Every market is different. Texas has a different market, right? Vegas is a different market. It'll kind of give you based on like what it'll be on your, once it's stabilized, right? Value added acquisitions of 5.5. Your suburbans are 4.9. This is just more of a guideline. This is not like tried and true, but this is kind of more of a guidance for you based if it's once it's stabilized, right? Luxury metro class. So the lower the cap rate, the more stabilized the property. So we're gonna run that at 8%. Vacancies, market vacancy, you typically want to always account for 5% because it's never going to be 100% occupied. And sometimes there is, right? But you're always going to account for some kind of vacancy. So I always run it at a 5%. Now, pro forma market rents, how I calculate that is basically I look at what we can rent it out for. This was already given to me, so I was running it based on what they told us. So our pro forma market rents would be the average of $1,011.11. But for a number's sake, let's just say it's $1,100. You see how when I plug that in, everything else gets pretty much calculated for. So pro forma, that terminology is just basically saying what is the future projection of this property. That's what it means, just future performance. And then we got your Capx budget per unit. So what does that mean? Capx is capital expenditures, which means what are you going to be, how much is it going to cost to renovate, and what are we going to use to budget per unit? There is 9 units for this property. One of them is vacant. One is gutted out, right? Out of the 9, 8 of them are occupied, which is right here. But one of them is a manager is living there, so he's not paying any rent. So he's living rent free, no income. So that's a 0. So what does that mean? These are under market rented properties. When you're under market, there's lower value. The more money that you can put into the property that it generates, the higher that you can sell off the property. This is why a lot of investors love multifamily, because you can do so many things to give value to the property that'll increase your property value. Even just raising rents by $100 will raise the value of your property when you're ready to stabilize it and reposition. So what did we give this Capx budget per unit? Let's see. I said $15,000. Even though it is already renovated, right? Maybe for the new buyer, he doesn't want this design. He wants to go back in there, jack up all those floors, and then turn it into something he likes better. So I gave it a $15,000 budget, right? With that said, if you take 15,000 times 9, it'll give you a rehab total of $135,000, right? At 9 units. And then expense ratio. Typically, expense ratio is basically what it's saying is what is your expense to your rent income that it's taking. So if I say it's 100%, then you're not making any money. But typically 50%, that would be based off of. Let me see 1 second. What does it take? Sorry, I'm messing up my. So expense ratio is just basically taking what your expenses are for your property. And we stick around pretty much around that 40 to 45% ratio. You don't ever want to go past 50% of your expenses. I drafted it at the 42%. So let's say if we say is okay, here we go. Expense ratio, there we go. So it's taking it from your gross effective income, right? And where do you get your gross effective income is from taking your future projection rents by multiplying the number of units. That's what your gross potential rent income is. And if we're doing that expense ratio of 42%, that would come out to $47,000 right here. This current occupancy is just basically 100% occupancy minus the 5% vacancy. So we're working this very just backwards. When I found this calculator, I was like, damn, why haven't I found something like this sooner? And the reason why is because this helps us see and what we can offer on the property real quick. All I gotta do is punch all these small little inputs right here. Now I know exactly where to offer if I'm trying to do a value add. If this property is already stabilized, but I still want to make a little bit of money, what do I have to offer? And then if we have to wholesale it, right? So if you focus right here, based on all those numbers, if we're trying to do a value add, technically we should be offering on this property a max allowable offer of $437,000 based on a 70% ARV, right? What it's doing is just saying, if at that stabilized value, you multiply it by the 70% and then you minus your rehab costs, you should be at $437,000, right? So we're working backwards on this. So this actually helps me generate a number of where to offer at a fair market value. Now this agent, this broker, their asking price for this property is at $800,000. And in Vegas, it's really, really hard to find properties under 100K right now. So this is definitely very attractive, which is what stood out to me. And I said, hey, why don't I just underwrite this? Let me see if I can, based on my numbers, if this is a good deal. And when I posted it up last week, I got a few hits that people were interested in actually purchasing this property. So right off the bat, this is a hot deal. It's already $100,000 per unit. So this is for sure. I thought this was a great deal to analyze. And so if we come down here, this is what the unit breakdowns are. 1 bed, 1 bath. There's 4 of them. And then there's 5, 2 bed, 1 bath. But remember, one of the units is vacant. It's boarded up, not being used. There's no income. The other one, there's a manager living in it. There's 0 income at all because they're, I guess, the seller wants that person to be on property to oversee all the units. So in compensation, I'm going to give you free rent. Because typically when you have somebody managing the property, we take into account about 10% for that, right? So the seller is saving some money, but at the end of the day, this is probably one of the original owners that bought it back in the day. This was built in 1958. He just hasn't raised rents in a long time. Let me get some water because I'm like dry mouth. But if you guys have any questions, let me know.
The guy's a genius. Love that guy. What's cracking, everybody? How you guys doing?
Doing well. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Oh, you know me, just sitting here looking at this little duplex out in Las Vegas, just running some numbers.
That's my man, Shane. That's my man.
Hey, did that guy in Fresno ever get back to you?
Oh, you know what? I dropped the ball on that one. Let me
You
actually,
could have
let me
just
just, I'm
sent him
gonna
a
put this on
text.
mute. Let me call him. Yeah.
Cause like I don't know if he took the fucking listings down, man, like 4 days ago.
He might have just been listed. He might go list it.
But I was just so excited, like, bro, in that text message screenshot I sent you, I was like, if you look at how I'm like reiterating to him, so you're gonna give both of the properties for the 475 at this number at only 4%. He was like, yeah. I was like, there's no way. They both have their own ARVs, which equal up to higher than 475.
Oh, he's about to get the deal of a lifetime once he goes with the realtor. They're gonna tell him like, yo, you're undercharging.
For real, for both sides. If you add up the ARVs on the right side and the left side, it equals up higher than 475, just as what they show as is. That's why I couldn't believe it.
What's this guy's name?
I couldn't even get that from him, how busy he was trying to act. I never got to actually, he never answered my calls.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I only texted him.
Wow. Just gonna hit him and be like, hey, I had seen your ad on for sale by owner. Forgot to call you.
Hey, Stan, I got a quick question.
Sure.
Is this pretty standard as far as the pro forma, calculations, as far as it being, it's looking to be almost double on everything. So I didn't know if that was standard or
Wait, say that again.
maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but right now it's saying that the rent is 425 and the pro forma, obviously what you could hope to get it to is about double. Am I looking at that right?
Yep, correct.
Okay. So is that pretty standard what you see with like off-market properties or?
So this is just based on the rental comps in the area, is how they analyzed it, right?
Okay.
We just take a radius and see what's as far as like multifamily units, what are other units charging for theirs. And this is what they came out with was the 900. These are not my numbers, these are theirs. So that's how I underwrote it.
Okay. I guess I was just curious because, assume that 2 or 3 of those 2-bedroom, 1-baths are under a 3-year contract, worst case scenario, then that's what I would be concerned about, I guess.
Mhm.
It's gonna be a sweet deal for whoever ends up doing all the value add, can get that pro forma in place.
Yeah,
I don't think
this
it's
is
normally like that. I don't think I normally see it double up. Maybe these renters got in there when the rent rates were low, and they've been there since, and they haven't done any value add. And so now that the economy's come up and prices are basically double now, that's just probably one of the only ones that are still left like that, which is pretty cool for whoever's going to buy it, because you have to double up on its money, or at least on look at the bringing in 3,400. And if you rent out the other 2 that are not, look, it's bringing in 91. What a crazy difference, like almost 3 times the amount.
Yep. See, that's the cool thing about underwriting deals. You can really just see the story behind it without even knowing much of the background. And you can kind of figure out what's the scenario, right? And Carlos was on point with that, because I didn't tell him much of the background either. I think this is the first time you're really seeing it.
Yeah, I was late. I'm gonna have to watch this on the recording tomorrow. But I'm just thinking in my head, that's probably the only way that I can see this happening, is that whenever they locked the people in there, whenever the tenants got in there, the rental rates were low, and they've probably been there since then. And the owner or the landlord hasn't decided to charge up the rents,
Yep. That's exactly the story. That's when I called the broker today. That's what she said. All these renters have been there for a long time. Now they're all month to month, right? And now you're in a good position as the end buyer to potentially, have them either raise the rents, or they're gonna have to find somewhere else, because what you're doing is you're giving life back to this property by giving back, what it deserves, right? You're just taking like an ugly property and making it a lot nicer, but then with that comes with higher rents, right? Better amenities, better look, and it helps change the neighborhood's atmosphere, right? you're giving more safety. Even though it's not in the best neighborhood, it's like kind of in the beginning of in the corner lot of that street. So once that happens, it kind of helps, I don't want to, what's the word? Regentrify the surrounding area. Right? So usually once one starts, another one usually follows after it. But there's only certain type of investors that see the beauty in ugly properties like this. But this is what I like about it, because a lot of Class C investors, that's where they get the best bang for their buck, right? When you do value add Class C properties. And that's what I try to find investors for. And these usually get swooped up real quick versus like a Class A or Class B, because Class A, Class Bs, we're talking about in the millions, and you have multiple doors, multiple keys, but they're typically more established, right? You're gonna get higher end amenities, and most of the time is, a lot of investors can't turn those around as quick. Okay. Okay.
What's the purchase price on this thing again?
So they are asking 800. So that came out to $888 per door. Right.
Mhm.
So with that being said, if we go down here, let's go back to this. Okay, so property tax is $1,642 per year, $333.50 per month on insurance. That's your PI. And then they have pest control, and then everything else is all on the tenants. There's no electric, there's no water, no sewer, no garbage being added to your expense.
That's your TI, right?
That's your tenant. That's your tenant operating
No,
expenses.
I think you said PI, isn't it? TI.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, tax insurance. Sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
taxes is insurance. And then we have zero in RUBS. RUBS is rent utility bill back system. But there's none of that, right? And then we have to always take into account property management. You always want to underwrite all your multifamily with property management fees, and that's typically about 10%. You always want to write in 5% of vacancies, because you're always going to have vacant properties. You're never always 100%, and if you are, it's because your market rent is low, or it's because you just have renters there for a long time and they just like the place. And then the higher the maintenance, which is typically 5%, is a good way to start. The lower the maintenance fees, that means that, the more stabilized. So sometimes you see like Class A's that have like 2 to 3% on maintenance fees, but because this is a Class C, 5% is a good start. Okay. And then this is going to be an 80-20 down payment. The way I typically write is about 20% down payment, because investment properties for multifamily typically starts at 20%. Sometimes they go up to 25%. Okay. I wrote this originally out of 5.5. Okay. I think there's some rates for some lenders now are going down to like the 4.6, but let's stick with that 5.5. The higher you go in interest rate, the more conservative, then you can always adjust and factor in those costs. And so on a 30-year term, and then basically $652,000 would be what's your finance after a 20% down payment. So your down payment would be $163,000 on $800,000 purchase price. Your closing costs is about 2.5%. You got your renovation repairs right here, that $135 at $15,000 per unit. So the cash required for this deal, all in, would be $318,375. If you take in all the down payments, closing costs, we don't have any closing credits, and then also renovation costs. Okay, it would be that. So if we look right here, actually, let's look back up here.
Question.
Yep.
Yo, on can you go back down a little bit? On the renovation, does that money have to be there all up front or no? Because wouldn't it be you renovate as you go, as it becomes vacant, or no?
Yes, correct. So you always want to put in renovation costs, especially for these types of distressed properties. This is just more of a budget estimate, right?
Right.
Because you always want to take in consideration, what is it going to cost for you to fix these properties? Most of the time, these investors are pretty experienced. They know their cost per unit. And it's a little different from how we underwrite single family rentals, right? Or single family homes. We're accustomed to writing it per square feet. For multifamily, it's usually per unit, because most of the times they're just rectangles or squares, and then they're cookie cutters. So if you know what you're doing to we call it a classic room, which is like your old design, and then turning it into a premium, then you already know what's going to cost, what's going to take to renovate for those. That's why we take that into account for budgeting right here.
Mhm.
You missed this part for the Capx budget. I did 50,000 per unit, which is how I came up with that 135.
Got you. And so then that's the amount needed to fix each unit as they go, right? So like the money doesn't have to be dispensable, I guess, right away, because you have like maybe the 2 units that are vacant, those ones you could already drop those 15, start renovating them. And if you raise the rents on other people and they decide to leave, then you can start renovating those ones, kind of like
Yep.
that, right? So you could even take a year, 2 or 3 years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The more units, obviously you don't want, I mean, ideally, if you can have everybody vacate all at once and you go in and repair everything all at once, that's the best scenario. But the more units, the more people you have, the harder to get them out. But at the same time, it all depends on their lease terms, right? So based on the rent rolls, you would know, hey, this tenant in room A is leaving in 3 months. Then you can start budgeting for that. But let's say they're all month to month, right? Once you know that they're month to month, it's easier to say, hey, give them a 30-day notice, like, hey, new ownership, letting you guys know this is your 30-day notice that you guys are going to be asked to vacate the premise or whatever it is. So it all depends on what the rent roll says and how you want to partake in it.
Got it.
Good question, bro. All right, so we should be almost done. So I'm just gonna go over this real quick. The the current analysis on this, I don't know why it says current pro forma analysis. Current analysis. This is the current rent, right? If we're purchasing, let me do 800 because this is what they're asking. So based on that 800,000 purchase price, 80% loan to value, down payment, closing costs, principal, interest of 5%, 5.5%, 30-year mortgage. Your monthly mortgage is $3,633, right? With the current rents only coming out to $3,450 with the 2 vacancies, and you're taking into account all your expenses, right? That 10% for management fees, you got your property taxes, etc. Your total operating expenses outweigh your NOI in a sense, because you're taking your NOI and you're deducting all your operating expenses, and you're coming out with 2,219. But if you take your monthly mortgage and you take your net operating income, you're actually under. So if you bought this at 800,000 and you're getting it financed, you're actually coming out of pocket $1,414 every month. And if you don't do anything, then you're bleeding almost $17,000 for the year, which makes it an annual ROI of negative almost 10%. Does that make sense? Because these guys are under market rent. So if you buy this right off the bat, getting a finance on this would be a little bit hard, because it technically wouldn't qualify for what other investors call as a DSCR loan, debt service coverage ratio, right? We can go into that later, but this market,
The current state doesn't look well on paper, so then they don't want to loan on it, but investors understand the pro forma, the value add, and then once it stabilizes, obviously it'll make sense, but I get it.
Yep. So a lender wouldn't lend on this based on what the current performing property is, because they don't typically lend on a pro forma, they lend on what's actually being rented out rented at. So that current cap rate is only performing at 3.33%. Okay. And how do we get a cap rate? You take your annual NOI and you divide it by the purchase price of the property, right? So you take this 26,000, you divide it by 800,000. This is generating 3.3% cap rate, but you're actually negative on the return of investment because of the, it's not cash flowing. So if you were to fix it up, you put the 135 grand in, let's say, you raise the rents up, added value. Now everyone's able to rent it out at full price, 900 per room on the 1-1s, 1,100 for the 2-1s. Now focus on here. Now we've stabilized the property. What does it look like? Well, you're generating $9,100 a month minus all your expenses. Your expenses have gone up, right? Also,
Right.
your rental rates have gone up too. But you're offsetting your monthly mortgage because your monthly mortgage didn't change, but your rental rates did. So now you're generating $3,100 a month, and it converts to about 37,000 plus per year. Now your ROI just went up to almost 21%, right? That's fucking attractive. Your cap rate now is also floating at a 10% plus, which is pretty nice, right? 10% on your money return based on your annual net operating income. So if we look right here, we drop it back on this side. If you look at the pro forma, remember that if we took those average rents per door, it's coming down to $1,011. Based on the actual average, it's only $383. But if you take the difference, if you take this number and you minus the current actuals average, the difference is $627. So by increasing rent and getting the rents up to that number, you're actually adding $805,000 of value to the property just by increasing the difference on the rent. Okay. If I lost you guys, let me know. Because how we did this was you're taking your pro forma average of the 9 rents, right? You're minusing the actual average of what's being currently rented out for. The difference is $627. You multiply that by 9 units. You multiply that by 95% occupancy, and by 12 months with the market cap rate of 8%, we just added value of $805 to the property from just increasing rents. Okay.
So just double, you bought it for 800 and now you just basically doubled up on it.
So what does that mean, right? You bought it for 800. You take that plus that. So now your property value, oops.
So you automatically get appreciation on it.
Yep. Now your property's
that'll go through time, right? After actually everything is already stabilized.
Yep. So once you're ready to sell it off, now you can say, hey, my property is valued at an 8 cap, and we can sell it for $1.6 million just because we raised the rents by that much. So this is what actually your new value of your property is from that 800,000. You basically doubled in price.
Higher.
Pretty sick. Okay. Here's some napkin underwriting. You guys want to, oh, did I break these? I did break it. Yeah.
You broke it, bro.
I did break it. I can fix that. It's all good.
The joys of Excel, man.
Yeah, it's all good. Okay. Does anybody have any questions right now? I just got a few more things and then everybody's good to go.
This is Dave Leibowitz. 510-577-0705.
There you go. Carlos. Okay, cool. So typically how we do, how I find deals for my investors, I always look for, I mean, there's different ways that you can underwrite deals, right? Sometimes you want to walk into a property that's already cash flowing. So if you want to focus on the actuals, some people like to find properties that's already cash flowing from the start. So some investors don't want this deal because it's not cash flowing. But for some investors, they say, hey, Stan, find me a deal. All I want you to focus on is a cash and cash return. I just want to make anywhere between 10 and 15% cash and cash on the pro forma basis. So this would be ideal for them, right? And what does that mean? It's just more like predicting what the future value of a property is. That's how I want you to underwrite it. Sometimes it's a little confusing. So they don't care about if the property is in distress. They just want to make sure that after they fix it and then they reposition the property, that they can cash on the property more than 10% annually. So this would be ideal for somebody. And then it's running at a 10% cap. So how do we do that, right? Let's say at 800,000, it might be too expensive. I don't want to, the investor doesn't want to offer that. There's a terminology that we use, it's called massaging the numbers. So we can say, hey, I want it to perform at a 15% cash and cash. What do we have to offer? So let's say we change it to 700,000. And what does that do? It bumped it up, right, to almost 15%. So if he wants 15%, we're going to have to offer a little bit lower to justify that. So now it's at 15.37. So that's how we can kind of help investors negotiate on price based on what the property's value is, what the concessions are, whatever deals that's on the table. We can always massage the numbers, right? We can always manipulate it so that it makes sense for an end buyer. But it's not always going to work, because sometimes, like for this is already a deal. It's hard for Vegas. It's hard to find a property that's under 100,000 per unit. So if we're going to drop the price to 675, the other party might say, no, that's way too low. We got other offers, that's a lot better. So they would, we would basically negotiate ourselves out of the deal, because we're coming in at not a strong offer for the other party, right? So there's ways to do it. It just has to make sense for both sides. Cool. And I guess last thing, just gonna go over DSCR. So I'm not a lender. Obviously, you want to talk to a lender for this, but I add this as part of my metrics on the DSCR side, which is your debt service coverage ratio. This is basically what the bank looks at on what your asset is performing and what they're going to loan on the property. Ideally, what they want to see on a DSCR is a 1.25, right? They want to see that you're making 25% more on your net operating income versus your debt service. And what is debt service? It's basically taking what your principal and interest is. So your monthly mortgage payments. So if you take your monthly mortgage payments on your NOI and you divide that by your debt service, that's how you get your DSCR. So this wouldn't qualify on the loan because it's at a 0.61. They want you to have at least 1.25 in order for them to loan you on the property. If that makes sense. Hopefully I didn't lose you guys on there. And then right here, there's another one called gross rent multiplier. What this means is if this property, we buy it for 800,000, okay, based on the numbers that we kept in place, it should make our money back in 7.3 years. That's what it's basically saying, right? We're taking your purchase price and you're dividing it by your gross rental income per year annually. So that's how you come up with your DSCR, or you come up with your gross rent multiplier numbers, what we call a GRM. So that's going to take you 7 years to make that money back, if we can rent it out for these numbers. Okay. I think that's it. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Hopefully you guys learned something. If you guys did find value, obviously invite other people every week. We do this every Friday at 3 p.m. PST. So hopefully you guys learned something today. If you guys have any questions, let me know. My number is right here on the screen, so you guys can feel free to reach out to me anytime you guys have any commercial questions.
Bro, you're the best, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Stan,
What up, man?
quick question. I was just asking somebody that's in Vegas. It's a little duplex. I asked them if they had a mortgage or if it was free and clear, and they said not sure why that's relevant. What would I know that's not really about what you was just talking about, but it does lightweight have to do with multifamily. But I just wanted to know that to see if I had an exit strategy or an entry strategy of acquiring it subject to. Like, what would be the best way to say something to them to make them not feel weird?
So you're asking them if they have a mortgage or if they have the property free and clear?
Yeah, I just straight up asked, is there a mortgage or do you own it free and clear?
And they didn't want to disclose whether they do or not, right?
They said not sure why that's relevant. I know they do.
Oh, just tell them it's relevant because you have to know where to analyze the property at. Because if you don't know what they owe, then what offer can you give them?
Okay, yeah, because I ain't even got to make any type of office or anything. I just asked them a couple of questions because no lie, it's a follow-up that I kind of like dropped the ball on a little bit ago. But since I got another phone to start doing business with, I used that number instead because I never really told them what my name was or nothing. So as a follow-up, I kind of dropped the ball in the first conversation because I didn't really know what I was doing at that time until I really got around you guys. So now, I come back to it with my other number now and just hit them straight as an investor because I messed up last time. I said I was a buyer. So it just threw the whole conversation like retarded.
Yeah. So word of advice, anytime you're talking about financials, you never want to text, right? You always want to get in a conversation with them on the phone. So you can actually hear like the demeanor and their tone of voice. I wouldn't ask anything when it comes to financials via text. You always want to feel them out, right? And then you can feel out based on their motivation too. But yeah, you definitely need, it's just more of a guidance for you. It's like, hey, where do I take this conversation? How can I help you? Obviously, it's the more information you have about them that they can disclose that they're comfortable with, the more that you are able to figure out what solution you can give them.
Okay, yeah, for sure. It's just, that's me getting overzealous, feeling better, getting a better conversation out of them this time, actually answering my questions. And me, I'm balls deep. I'm just gonna ask you straight up.
Yeah, I would just ask them and just be straight up with them. I mean, I would call them and get it on that way versus text. Sometimes text, there's no emotion on text, right? So it's hard to really gauge.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, they're probably just a little confused. They just said they didn't know why that was relevant because I haven't said anything about anything yet. So I could see why I just hit them with you got an open mortgage on this thing or you own it free and clear? I just wanted to hear them say yes because I see the data shows it was bought 10/29/2020 for $194,000. And that's 2 months and 10 days would be 2 years. Like I know you still got a mortgage on that. It was just me teeing myself up to ask, well, how much is it? Like, well, how much is it? But as you said, like I shouldn't be doing that in text. Like that's not, boy, you better be on the phone asking that question.
Yeah, yep.
Just
Exactly.
because she's older than me doesn't mean she has to treat me like.
All right, what do you think, Carlos?
Sam didn't mean anything.
What's up?
I said, what do you think? Was that the right opinion?
I'm sorry, I wasn't even paying attention to that.
Oh, you weren't paying. Oh, it's all good then. No worries.
Yeah.
No, I feel like that
sending
was
out an
the right
email.
thing.
I just took a call right now and then I was sending out the emails that I needed to on this one. I apologize. What was it?
I kind of messed up. Going a little bit too far, trying to, I established contact through text with somebody in Vegas, and I kind of asked them straight up and through text about if they had a mortgage or if it was free and clear. And he was like, with information like that, it's a little more sensitive and stuff to just come out like that in text. He wouldn't advise me to do it that way, more so be on the phone talking to them because there's no emotions with text. And when you ask that question over the phone, you can gauge based off of vocal tone and emotion and stuff like how you're riding it.
Yeah, it's better off everything on the phone, especially when you're like, you got to think like as a big boy, right? Big girl, big boy. I mean, it's down to talk about the serious game, like the serious numbers. at first it's cool to text and build rapport, but being professional, when it's time to talk numbers, you want to jump on the phone and you want to be able to maneuver and then build that strength right there, because it becomes easier. But that's what you want to do. I agree with Stan on the numbers thing and texting. Here's one way that it could work is, let's say as you're building rapport through text messages and you find out the seller is really distressed, not a for sale by owner, because if they're real distressed, it'd be like maybe pre-foreclosure or some other reason that's making them distressed. I've seen people close deals over the phone several times on really distressed people. Numbers go out, all the text messages come back and forth. But the majority of people, it's going to be hard for, let's say you start texting me and you're asking me for like pretty sensitive information. I don't know you and I haven't actually verified you, things like that. And you want me to send you my address, my name, statements of things like that. It's a little different.
Yeah, as I said, I got a little overzealous. I get excited when somebody starts giving me some combo. I just get excited, and I'm just like, all right, let me just get it through it. Let's go straight
Just say,
to
hey,
the
do you
4
have
pillars.
a couple of minutes? Just be like, hey, do you have a couple of minutes to chat on the phone? And just jump on, talk some numbers, and then just tell them, hey, I could jump off, and we can just continue texting from here.
I just get excited.
Like the goggles.
Oh, you know me. I gotta come smooth. That's just for cutting woods.
Cool.
That's funny.
Does anybody else have questions? There's a few more people that trickled in while we were doing it, so.
Yeah, Stan. So I've been finding a couple of properties that are owned by the city of Vegas. Are those like not for sale, or what's going on with those? Like, it's not by the airport. It's like in the middle of the city. So like, do you know are those available, or what's the deal with that?
Dude, weren't we talking about this yesterday, Stan?
I think we were talking about this yesterday. Yeah, but I think
with
he's saying-
DeMarcus. Are you working with DeMarcus?
Nah, this is a different.
Both you guys just happened to literally go and ask the same question one day apart from each other.
Yeah.
Same exact question about the same houses in Vegas by the airport.
No, it's not by the airport though. It's a little bit different. I can pop in the address. You guys can even take a look at it, but it seemed like it got taken over by the city. And I mean, do I just check with the recorder, the county clerk or something, or what's the deal?
I mean, if you don't want to put it on the recording, you can send it to text and then I can look it up off screen.
Here,
I can give you my opinion.
I could just pop it up right there. It's all good.
Okay, let me see. Let's look at this. South 11th Street.
Yeah, I mean, it looks distressed and everything, but it's owned by the city of Vegas. Checking all the records and stuff, they took it over. They took it over a couple months ago.
I wonder why. Let me look at Clark County site. The aerial map looks like it was demolished.
Oh shit.
It looks like it's demolished, but I mean, I wonder. Let's see.
Hey, Martin.
Yeah.
It's this guy on YouTube that I follow. He's a agent out in Las Vegas that does hella good like market analysis and detailing and stuff. And he's called like the Lobo Group on YouTube. I like use him for things like that, like how you said, like, oh, like what's going on with these houses. Like he gives good market analysis and data of what's going on out there in Vegas and stuff. And like it kind of, I feel like out in Vegas, like what's going on is the city is lightweight buying properties back so that they can build projects to make like housing, but build up.
Oh, okay.
Because like how housing is getting out of control and stuff. So in Vegas, you know, their money makers are tall buildings where they can fit thousands of people in them instead of small ones. So I feel like the way the market and everything switched this year and how like 80% of their agents damn near flopped and hella shit. He even spoke about how Open Door like literally broke down their logistics of how they're losing money on over like 80% of their properties that they have to resell right now, like that they bought like months ago. Like he's going that far into stuff on his videos. So I feel like the Vegas market in itself, I feel like they're really about to pivot to trying to get more tall buildings and stuff like that to get more type of apartments and stuff going.
And this must be her goddaughter.
Word.
I mean,
Yeah, man.
That could,
That's me.
that could make sense. I mean, on here is obviously it looks like a standing building, but the aerial shot looks like it's been demolished.
Oh snap! Yeah, that dude's
Right?
That's crazy.
So I don't know. Let's see.
How close are you to the actual location?
Me, not. I'm far. I'm in Anaheim.
Oh yeah, you're farther. Oh, I thought you was out there. in
No,
Vegas.
but I go out there. I go out there a lot. My brother, my cousins live out there. So I mean, I'm out there a lot though. So.
Okay, I'd say your best bet right now, because I fucking hate the way that they update like Google pictures and videos and stuff. Nothing ever really lines up. The only way we really ever know now would be like boots on the ground. You gotta get somebody out there,
Word.
So this
drive
is
by
America.
it.
Let me see, where's this at?
Oh, look at that. What is it? A street behind it or like
Okay, so
parking
this
space?
is, I think this is probably like 15 minutes away from where I live, but.
Oh, it's
Maryland
too
Park-
far for Stan.
Oh, that's too far for me.
Yeah, 15 minutes in Vegas.
Not like
takes you a
Sam,
minute.
willing to drive a state away to go and drive for dollars.
Okay, so this is
That's my
updated.
boy.
I'm not sure why the city bought it, but this is obviously constructed with pavement now.
Parking.
That looks
Parking,
parking lot.
yeah, so that's a parking lot. Over here, it's like empty, right? So this has been developed.
Oh.
The question is, why did they take it back? Yeah,
There's
I
a
don't-
full parking lot right there for like no reason.
So, who be with me?
But at the end of the day, if I find these, like, just fucking just disregard them then, or like pretty much the city has a plan for them.
Something happened, right? This is boarded up. Something happened to where they bought it, so they took it back. Not sure why. I mean,
Could it
you
just
can-
be like a REO?
It could, I mean, it could be. Like what city, I mean, if it's a REO, it's usually a bank would buy it back. I don't know what the condition is if a city bought it back, so.
Oh, you're right.
What does REO
mean-
mean again?
Real
Like
estate,
real estate operated or?
real estate owned by the bank.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, like bank owned.
Yeah,
bank.
basically bank owned, like real estate owned. So they're saying like the bank owns that piece of real estate. It's like repo, basically without the P in it, REO.
Yeah.
Like they're gonna repo that house from you, but they take the P out of it. So it's just
I love it.
REO.
He's like repo. Let's do it.
Well, no, because like right now he just brought up something that like I'm learning right now as we're doing this. So I'm just like I'm diving into it. I want him to go look at that guy too. Like the Lobo Group, he gives fucking great licensed real estate agent going full deep analysis and shit on like the market.
Fire.
Normal shit that we wouldn't see. Like he's just blatantly saying it and showing it to us. And I'm just like, this helps a lot.
What'd you say his name was? Lobo?
Yeah, like the THELEBO group, all like together with no space. Because his name is something Lobo, I believe.
Lebo Group. Okay, I see him.
Yeah, Lebo, Lobo. Oh, I keep saying Lobo, Lebo.
All right, guys, you guys go to find multifamily to underwrite for next week so we can buy it.
I got you.
All right, guys. Appreciate your guys' time.
Thanks,
See you
Dan.
guys.
Word, thanks, Sam.
Thank you
Everybody, good
very
night.
much.
We love you, Stan.
Hey, the man.
Thank you, y'all.
That is Joe.
Later, gents.
Buried it? That's what you do with the time capsule.